Hello, friends. Namaskar. Today I'm here for a very special reason. I feel that these days some lies are being propagated by some amateur analysts, or rather the paid agents of the enemy countries. Some of these lies are, firstly, that if India decides to invade POK, or even talking about invading POK, makes India extremely vulnerable. Second lie is that China has occupied 1,000 to 2,000 square miles of Indian territory. And the third lie is that Indian army has become highly politicized after the arrival of PM Modi into power in 2014. I believe that these analysts, they're just immature and not working for any adversarial actors. But in this presentation, I'm going to counter all these three myths or lies point by point. First, so most of these people who are making such flawed statements, they have in mind a certain framework. They believe that India will have to face a twin front warfare, twin front war with Pakistan and China at a time if India invades POK, or if India even plans to have some aggressive designs in POK. Okay? And that will lead India into a major problem. Now the question is that when we look at this problem, we have to look at what exactly we mean by war. What will be the complexion of war in such case? So wars are generally fought at three levels. First is the lowest level is battles and tactics. That is like the basically battles which are fought on the ground, and that employs the involvement of tactics and various short battles. Then the second, the middle level, that involves campaigns and operations where the planning is done, where basically the outcome of the war is determined. And as we all know, that the outcome of the war is more than the outcome of small battles. It is not just an aggregation or the sum of the outcomes of various battles, but it is a bit more than that, a lot more than that. And the third level is the strategic level, where the political and military leadership, they work in unison. They work in tandem to achieve the political and military objectives of the war, which they have already predetermined. Now, given this criteria, let's look at India and Pakistan equation. Some of these analysts who are making that, claiming POK or even talking about it makes India vulnerable. They argue that India has advantages only in the battles and tactics because India has more numbers of troops. However, this advantage is offset by Pakistan's edge in the strategic matters. They believe that in Pakistan, and it is true to a great extent also, that in Pakistan, all the decisions pertaining to the foreign policy and wars with India are taken by Pakistani army and their deep state, their intelligence establishment. Whereas in India's case, all these decisions are taken based on the consensus and discussion between the political and military leadership, which makes it much more lengthier and sometimes indecisive also, and it impacts the movement of troops, the deployment of troops, and even the shifting of forces because of some centralized machinery, a centralized way of making decisions by the Pakistani army. The process is much faster and much smoother in the case of Pakistan. Now, having said that, my question is that, well, in the last 70 years, India has won 4 wars with Pakistan, and defeated them in a very embarrassing manner. Pakistan was in a very embarrassing position after all these defeats. Now, all this while, Pakistan had that same army making decisions, they had that same ISI making decisions, and in India, political leadership and military leadership discussed and took all that lengthy process, sometimes even indecisiveness crept in and all that. But despite all these odds, India won the wars. Despite all these odds, India won the wars. So that certainly proves that this particular edge is more of a theoretical concept, and certainly it works uh, to the advantage of Pakistan to a certain extent, but it has never been a major influential factor in determining the outcome of the wars between India and Pakistan. Okay. Now, the second aspect, when it comes to India and Pakistan, both the countries look at an ideal outcome, the ideal situation of physically occupying each other's territory, or let's say, just inflicting severe damages to the combat capabilities of each other's armies, and also it may involve some prisoner of war situation. Now, if all these three criteria are taken into consideration, then India has definitely inflicted massive damages to Pakistan's combat capabilities in 47, 65, 71, Kargil War, and during the minor skirmishes also. India definitely went deep inside into their territory in 1965 and 71. Brigadier Bhavani Singh with his tank regiment was controlling large swaths of Pakistani territory during the 65 or 71 war. Indian forces occupied Haji Pir. Then in 1971, India intervened in this Bangladesh crisis, to the rescue of Bangladeshi rebels. And as a result of that 71 war, Bangladesh became an independent country and Pakistani army lost the battle. It was a major embarrassment for Pakistani army. Their 90,000 troops surrendered before the Indian army. In 1986, in Operation Meghdut, India occupied Siachen, which was another great strategic victory for India and a massive achievement for India. So we can see that in all the battles and wars, India has always been superior. India has defeated Pakistan. And the only thing in which Pakistan has some speciality, that is the proxy war. Over the last 3 decades, Pakistan has run a proxy war in Kashmir. In Punjab also, they supported the separatist forces. And why Pakistan resorted to the proxy war was the fact that they realized that they could not defeat India in a conventional war. Now, even in this proxy war, Pakistan has failed. After 3 decades of massive investment effort in the proxy war, India abrogated Article 370. After 3 decades of this investment in sabotage and subversion, Indian government, with all the strong determination and grit, went deep inside into the Pakistani territory and raided the Balakot terror camps of Jaish-e-Mohammed, killing 300 terrorists after the Pulwama Fedayeen attack. After the Uri Fedayeen attack, our troops went inside the POK and destroyed several Pakistani terror camps. So it seems that this Pakistani whole business of terror ecosystem and their expertise in proxy wars has come to naught. And we can see that all the terror groups which Pakistan had reared and Pakistan had sponsored, they're just now attacking Pakistani forces. The Taliban has trained its gun towards Islamabad. TTP is attacking Pakistani forces, and even some of these forces like Lashkar-e-Jhangi, Sepah-e-Sahaba, which were once backed by the Pakistani establishment, they are dismantling, they are destroying the social fabric of Pakistan, killing all the Shias in Pakistan, killing all the Ahmadiyas in Pakistan. And very soon, I can see that thing happening in the future very soon, that organizations like Jaish and Lashkar will be wreaking havoc in Pakistan because they have huge numbers of mujahideens, more than lakhs, in thousands. And if they are rendered unemployed, they will need some hunting grounds, and that'll be in Pakistan. They'll come to control the Pakistan's nuclear arsenal, and this army will be begging India for help in that case. So even in the proxy war, we can say that India has completely dismantled, neutralized Pakistani army. And some of these analysts claim that India has not won any war with Pakistan, which I just rebutted with very strong arguments. And they also claim that India has not won the proxy war. And what is the reason for their claim? They say that, well, the terror business is run from POK. All the terror camps are located there, and India has not dismantled any of the terror camps. India has been acting mostly in the Jammu and Kashmir. Indian Army constituted Rashtriya Rifles Unit. They have been fighting this terror war within the Indian territory, and they had no success in that. Besides that, forming these Rashtriya Rifles units also eroded their combat and counter-offensive capabilities. Well, I must argue that such arguments and claims are completely baseless and flawed. Okay. Firstly, constituting Rashtriya Rifles and deploying them in Kashmir for last 3 decades has made Indian Army a very strong counter-terrorism force, a professional fighting force which has developed an expertise in counter-terrorism, and it's a force which can tackle the terrorist organizations without harming the civilians, with the utmost respect and regard for the human rights. This is something which the other armies, other security forces in other parts of the world dealing with the terrorist organizations can learn from the Indian Army. And secondly, The people who claim that Indian the Army and India has not succeeded in dismantling terror business, they have a very shallow understanding of the terror ecosystem. Let me put it very clearly that this whole terror business in Kashmir has two pillars. First pillar is about the terrorist organizations which are based in Pakistan, POK, and they run from there. They have their handlers located there. But a very powerful constituent of this terror ecosystem is also located and operating within the Indian territory, that is in the Indian Kashmir. Okay. And that includes organizations like Jamaat-e-Islami, it includes separatist media, separatist organizations like Hurriyat, terrorist organizations, separatist charity groups, NGOs, and their elements working in the administration, working in the state institutions and academia, and a very vast network of terror funding. Now the government of India, especially after 2019, has completely dismantled this whole terror ecosystem. And the results we can see, there are hardly any stone pelting riots and protests these days. Terrorist organizations are having a very tough time in Kashmir. They're not able to infiltrate and they're not able to orchestrate large scale terror attacks. Besides that, they're also losing the battle of narratives. They're losing support in Kashmir. They're losing ground in Kashmir. And in desperation, they're killing civilians. They're killing Kashmiri Pandits. They're killing laborers from the other parts of India who are working in Kashmir and constituting the part of the entire developmental effort, contributing to the state's development. They're killing those civilians. They're killing non-Muslims in Kashmir. And this is an act of desperation, frustration, where you feel that you have nothing in the future to look forward to. And Pakistan also knows it damn well that one more Pulwama and the retaliation will be much, much wider and higher in scale, more than Balakot airstrikes. And they'll have to face a lot more. So they are also very skeptical. They are also very hesitant in supporting the terror groups in Kashmir and even orchestrating large-scale terror attacks, which is why the terrorist groups in Kashmir are frustrated, and they're simply just desperate and looking for resources, looking for strategies and tactics to sustain them, to sustain their support base among the people. The development effort of the government of India is also eroding their support among the people. So this is how India has succeeded, and definitely I guess this is the best time to talk about POK because that is our territory. In 1994, the members of Indian Parliament they passed a resolution that that's our territory and India will reclaim, India will take back its territory. So certainly the time has already arrived and we'll take it back. And luckily, we have a very powerful, strong and determined government in the center at this time, which is very sensitive and which is very concerned about the security interests of the country. In the past, in 1971, let's say 1965, if India returned the territories to Pakistan, which it occupied in those wars, or if India was lenient in the proxy war in Kashmir, it was by strategic choice. It was our choice because we believe in entirely different set of values. This is a democratic country. And then, of course, there was a certain degree of indecisiveness, within those governments. India was also facing a lot of external pressure during those times. But today, India is very different. India is a powerful country. The Western world needs us. Russians need us. Therefore, we don't have to face that external pressure which we were facing in the past. At the same time, we have a very powerful, determined, and a strong government. Economically, we are more or less like a superpower. We have surpassed Britain. We are competing with the topmost powers of the world in the economic realm. Technologically and in the military domain, we are doing far better. In the intelligence and strategic decision making, we have a much more confident government, much more effective government. In the new technology of drones, in the new technology of fighting capabilities, we are far superior. So I guess if the time, if there's any time to take back POK, then this is the right time. India should think about it, and definitely will get support from the people of the POK also, because they know it damn well that they have no future in Pakistan, which is going to be riddled with extremism and terrorism. Even in Kashmir, Shias know that they have a future with India because in Pakistan, extremists will kill them. Pahadis, Gujars, and other communities, even the majority Sunnis know that the Sufi values of Kashmir have no future in Pakistan. Pakistan is dealing with its internal issues. They're facing Taliban onslaught. They're facing Balochistan separatism. So they're very weak. And if our generals are talking about taking back POK, I guess, this is a very well thought out statement and a very wise decision. And this is the best time, to go for that. Now, talking about this, this allegation that Indian army has become highly politicized after the arrival of Modi into power. I guess this is again a very baseless statement. Indian army is a very professional and sophisticated fighting force, which has displayed highest levels of professionalism and discipline in the grave hours of crisis, and which has been very, I would say, obedient and very loyal to the Indian Constitution. And such people who are making such baseless allegations, they should always think about the armies of Pakistan who they are defending, and the armies of China, and the army of China. Pakistan's army is neck deep into corruption and embezzlement and has been interfering in politics majorly. It is not a fighting force. They have not won a single war in the last 70 years. Look at their generals, and their accounts in the Swiss bank in thousands of crores, and it includes big names like Nusrat Naim, General Bajwa, Asad Durrani, and the list can go on and on. And look at the Chinese army. It's a conscription army. It's a non-professional army, a highly politicized army, working for the particular party. So that's again a problem. Okay? So if anyone has to worry about the lack of discipline and the politicization of the army, then it's China and Pakistan, not India. Now coming to the China part. So some of these analysts claim that China's focus will not be on the battles and tactics, where India has some strength. India has an edge, as in the ground battles and tactics, and also in the air power. But they say that China's interest will not be in that. China will be focusing on the cognitive defeat of India. Now, let me put it in a very straightforward manner that China will not dare to intrude into the Indian territory, because they know that if they do it, it will be a major embarrassment for their army, because they're going to get a bloody nose. Indian forces are sturdy, with a very strong capability to survive and fight in those tough terrains, high altitudes and very lower degree temperatures. So they will give a bloody nose to China. This is not the India of 1962, when we had, we were low on supplies and ammunition, and when we were indecisive regarding using air power in the enemy territory. But today's Indian government is very determined and capable, and Indian army is very resource rich and fully equipped with all the ammunition, supplies, and high tech, and also a very brave fighting spirit. So if the Chinese army decides to get into the Indian territory, it will be a major embarrassment for them. And which is what we see. We already saw that in the Galwan crisis. In Galwan, 45 to 60 Chinese soldiers died. And it's not the Indian media which is saying that. The Russian media, American media, and the European media, they are making these claims. And Chinese army, China is hiding those numbers and statistics. They were just giving burial to their soldiers in hibernation. They were secretly doing that because they are ashamed. They know that if their embarrassment at the Indian hands gets exposed, then it will make a severe dent into into China's ambitions for leading the world power, becoming a global superpower and defeating the American influence over the global affairs. So they don't want to take that risk. So they will not get into a physical fight. Now coming to the cognitive defeat aspect, I mean, this is very clear cut that this is very evident that in the Galwan, everyone in the world believes that Chinese lost 45 to 60 soldiers. And so we get the simple question to ask is that whose cognitive defeat is that? India or China? Certainly China's cognitive defeat. And whole world blames China for the COVID virus spread. Again, whose cognitive defeat is that? In the propaganda war, it's China's cognitive defeat. The entire world sees China as a revisionist power, hell-bent on changing the cartography and making very aggressive, dubious claims, the territorial expansion, and supporting dubious dictatorial regimes through its BRI project. So this is how China is seen by the world community today. People don't trust its investments, trust its dealings and its rules and regulations when it comes to intellectual property rights or the technology transfer to censorship to various other areas. So it's the China which is already losing the propaganda war, the information war. And let me state it very clearly that if there is any warlike situation between China and India, the entire Western propaganda machinery will be working against China. And what propaganda war, information war can do in a battle, in a war, must be seen very clearly from the recent Ukraine-Russia war. I hardly need to explain it, how Western media has completely, shattered the Russian war plans and completely, just outsmarted them, okay, in the propaganda war business. Same thing China is going to face in any event of India-China war, or even in any event of India's twin front war with China and Pakistan. So this is something which they have to keep in mind. Okay? And while talking about the cognitive defeat, we should also look at how Pakistan has lost that propaganda war with India. Today, Pakistan is seen as a terror sponsor in the entire world. If their passengers go to US, they are subjected to extraordinary, very higher degree of frisking and scrutiny. Why? Because they are seen as terror sponsors. The people are suspect, and they don't get that respect. This is once again, the victory of India in the propaganda war, information war. I'm not saying that India used any subterfuge or any lies or deceit to spread this. We simply spoke the truth, and we were successful in exposing the evil designs of Pakistan and China. Okay? Mostly Pakistan in this case, in the terror business. Okay? And now these things stand exposed. And now comes the question of a twin front war. See, the question is that if India takes any action in the POK, what will be China's reaction? Well, there are various, opinions about it. Okay. Firstly, it is an internal matter of India because POK is the Indian territory. Therefore, India has every right to get into that territory. And because of
Abhinav, your
that, China.
camera. Abhinav, sorry to interrupt you, but your camera.
Yes. Let me state it clearly that if India invades POK or India takes any special military action in the POK, I wouldn't use the word invade because it is our territory. Okay? So India is likely to take a special military action to reclaim POK. Okay? If that happens, then it's an internal matter for India. It's an area which is a part of our territory. So China is not likely to interfere in the internal matter of India. Secondly, if India decides to go for destroying the terror camps and the terror infrastructure in POK, then it's a fight against terrorism, not a fight against a nation state. Certainly, China is not expected to interfere because China is itself facing a major threat from terrorist actors, terrorist organizations in Xinjiang. Okay. And thirdly, because CPEC is located in China, China may intervene. This is another opinion which is also suggested, and because of China's all-weather friendship with Pakistan. So here I would like to state it very clear that if China disturbs or if China tries to thwart any genuine, sincere Indian operation against terror infrastructure in POK in an open manner, then China stands exposed as an ally of terrorist organizations, as a country which is supporting a terror sponsoring country like Pakistan. So that is a huge reputation risk, which China, is not expected to take if it's a sensible, responsible nation. And as far as CPEC is concerned, I'm sure in the Indian special military operation or against the terror business, CPEC will not be harmed. And as a side thought, if POK comes back to India, then China can have a much better chances of running CPEC. As a side thought, I must state it very clearly that if POK comes back to India, imagine a hypothetical situation, okay, and I'm sure this is going to happen soon. In that case, for China, it's much more profitable and reasonable to deal with India for running its CPEC in POK. Because India is a responsible country, India doesn't support terror groups, and India is a much more effective and sophisticated in terms of giving a good administration and a good law and order situation for any economic development project like CPEC. So that's always profitable for China. So these are the arguments which I wanted to present. And last but not least, I also wanted to discuss about the fact that some people are claiming that India is hiding deaths in Galwan. Well, this is again a baseless allegation. Uh, And definitely, India is not hiding anything. If any country is hiding any figures and statistics, then it's China which is hiding. They had to give burial to their soldiers who died in the Galwan in secret in a very embarrassing manner. And last, before I end this discussion, I would like to talk about the third allegation that China has occupied 1,000 square miles to 2,000 square miles of Indian territory. Let me ask a simple question. What is their source? How are they quoting it? They've not visited Ladakh border. They've not visited Arunachal Pradesh border. They've not been to Depsang. They've not been to Demchuk. Then on what grounds they are claiming that China has occupied Indian territory? LAC is still undecided. It's not clear. It's undetermined. In 1960s, we had forward policy. So we set a forward post. Now, in that situation, if Chinese make some intrusion, some incursion into the Indian territory, establish some post, or at times if we make some incursion, that doesn't decide or settle the boundary forever. It is an ongoing process. The process is still on. Both the countries are mature countries and they are still discussing the matter to settle the final boundaries. So such claims that China occupied 1,000 square miles to 2,000 square miles of Indian territory, they are completely baseless and they are completely false, big lies. Except what they took in 1962, they have not occupied a single inch of Indian territory. And why should we believe these analysts, and these people who are the paid agents? They have their loyalties, under suspicion, maybe for some other country. But when the Indian army, a fully loyal Indian fighting force, and our prime minister is saying that China has not occupied a single inch of territory, why should we doubt that narrative? For some people whose loyalties are under suspicion. Oh, with this, I would like to end my presentation today, and I hope I've been able to clear some doubts and clear some misunderstandings and some myths pertaining around these things. Okay? Thank you very much. Jai Hind. Namaskar.